John Wayne Gacy was one of America's most notorious serial killers. In this video, we uncover his shocking crimes, the man behind Pogo the Clown, and the lasting impact of his actions. Before we dive in, stay tuned for weekly true crime videos you won't want to miss. He dressed like a clown. He made kids laugh. But beneath that painted smile, something far darker was hiding. John Wayne Gacy wasn't just a man behind a mask. He was a nightmare disguised as an ordinary neighbor. Decades later, when Stephen King's Pennywise terrorized readers, the resemblance to the real-life clown killer made even the bravest shiver. Gacy was born on March 17, 1942, in Chicago, Illinois. His father, John Stanley Gacy, was a strict, sometimes abusive man who demanded perfection. Mistakes were punished harshly. His mother, Marion, tried to keep the peace but often struggled to protect her son from his father's temper. From a young age, Gacy learned that appearances mattered and that hiding anger and vulnerability behind a smile could keep him safe. School didn't offer relief. Small for his age and frequently bullied, Gacy struggled socially. Classmates teased him, and teachers often saw a quiet boy who tried to stay out of trouble. But inside, resentment and fear simmered. He learned early that charm and compliance could protect him in a world that seemed hostile. This emotional training would later serve him in more sinister ways. By his teenage years, Gacy had perfected the art of a social mask. He could be polite, charming, and likable to adults while privately harboring rage and frustration. He joined clubs, attended social events, and practiced humor and confidence, all while feeling like an outsider. These skills, the ability to mask true intentions, would become central to how he deceived his victims and his community later in life. Gacy's early adult years were a mix of attempts at normalcy and early criminal behavior. In 1964, he married Carol Hoff, hoping to build a conventional life. But in 1968, he was convicted of sexually assaulting a teenage boy in Iowa and served 18 months in prison. Publicly, he returned to society appearing rehabilitated, but privately, his darker impulses were far from gone. After prison, he returned to Chicago and started a construction business. He employed young men, some of whom would later become his victims. Gacy became involved in local politics and volunteered for the Democratic Party. Neighbors saw a friendly, civic-minded man. Parents saw a man entertaining children at parties, hospitals, and charity events as Pogo the Clown. To most people, he was ordinary, even admirable. Yet beneath this facade, Gacy's violent tendencies persisted. By the early 1970s, he began preying on young men, often those seeking work or social connection. His charm, confidence, and carefully cultivated normalcy allowed him to lure victims without suspicion. He leveraged his business and clown persona to lower defenses and gain trust. Gacy's dual life was chilling. On the surface, he was a community volunteer and entertainer. Beneath it, he was methodically hunting victims. Psychologists would later describe him as a master of the mask of sanity, able to present warmth and charm while hiding psychopathic traits, manipulation, lack of empathy, and strategic planning. Even as his criminal activity escalated, his outward normalcy allowed him to operate freely. Neighbors saw barbecues, social gatherings, and children laughing at clown performances. Friends and colleagues observed a hardworking, friendly man. Meanwhile, victims were disappearing, hidden beneath his home or disposed of in nearby rivers. Some of his early victims were teenagers, often hitchhiking or looking for work. Others were acquaintances drawn to his home with promises of jobs or social events. Gacy's methods were premeditated. He would lure victims, restrain them with handcuffs or rope, and then carry out his attacks. The level of planning and patience was chilling, but it remained invisible to the public. Even subtle warning signs existed. Neighbors occasionally noticed strange smells, employees noticed odd behavior, and missing young men were reported in the area. Yet, in a community that trusted him, these signs were largely ignored. Gacy's ability to blend in and maintain a cheerful facade allowed him to continue for years without suspicion. Gacy's clown personas, Pogo and sometimes Patches, were more than costumes. They were extensions of the mask he had honed since childhood. He performed at parties and hospitals, bringing laughter and joy while simultaneously hiding the darkness he could not control. The juxtaposition of cheer and terror became a defining feature of his life and legacy. Psychologists analyzing Gacy note that his charm, outward normalcy, and social intelligence were instrumental in helping him evade detection. He learned to use social trust as camouflage, exploiting community respectably while carrying out horrifying acts in secret. By the mid-1970s, Gacy's behavior had intensified. He continued recruiting victims through his construction business, sometimes employing them temporarily, other times luring them with promises of work or friendship. The public remained oblivious, seeing only the friendly neighbor and the clown who brought smiles to children's faces. It is difficult to overstate the shock that came later when the true scope of his crimes was revealed. A man who could so convincingly present normalcy, who had performed for children, shaken hands with politicians, and volunteered tirelessly in his community, had been hiding a nightmare beneath his very home. The contrast between Gacy's public and private life, entertainer and murderer, is what makes his story one of the most chilling in American criminal history. It is a story of duality, deception, and the terrifying possibility that appearances can be dangerously misleading. By the early 1970s, Gacy's crimes had begun in earnest. Young men and teenagers were disappearing, often drawn to him through his construction business or social connections. Some were employees seeking work, others were acquaintances looking for friendship or opportunity. Each victim was carefully targeted, exploited, and controlled, a chilling demonstration of premeditation that allowed Gacy to operate under the radar. One of his early victims, Timothy McCoy, was just 16 years old, a boy seeking summer work and independence. Timothy trusted Gacy because he seemed friendly, offered a job, and appeared harmless. He never returned home. Families began noticing patterns, but the community still trusted the smiling, helpful neighbor. Another young man, John Bukovich, had moved to Chicago seeking work and a fresh start. Gacy offered him temporary employment and a place to stay. Like others before him, he vanished without warning. In retrospect, these early disappearances were the first signs of a terrifying escalation, but authorities had no concrete evidence linking Gacy to the crimes yet. Another victim, Kenneth Parker, had recently relocated to Chicago from a nearby suburb. He met Gacy through a mutual acquaintance and was offered temporary work. He, too, disappeared, leaving a family desperate for answers. Each loss began to form a pattern, though it remained invisible to most of the city. Gacy's methods were disturbingly consistent. He would lure victims to his home with promises of work, alcohol, or social events. Once there, he restrained them using handcuffs, ropes, or other tools. Some were sexually assaulted before being murdered. Each act was calculated, each concealment method carefully executed. Over time, Gacy's confidence and audacity grew. The man who entertained children as Pogo the Clown was also using that trust to hide his crimes. Performing at hospitals and parties, Gacy had access to social networks, community goodwill, and the ability to deflect suspicion. This dual life, public entertainer, private predator, allowed him to continue unchecked. As the number of victims grew, so did the boldness of Gacy's actions. He began to bury victims in the crawl space beneath his house, a hidden chamber where he could conceal evidence with chilling efficiency. When that space eventually filled, he turned to nearby rivers, disposing of bodies in ways designed to avoid detection. Despite subtle warning signs, occasional neighbors noting strange odors or employees mentioning odd behavior, Gacy maintained an image of normalcy. He was a host at neighborhood barbecues, a volunteer at political events, and a clown bringing smiles to children. The contrast between these activities and the horrors hidden beneath his home made his eventual exposure all the more shocking. Some victims were picked up while hitchhiking. Others responded to ads or casual offers of work. In every case, Gacy's charm and outward friendliness masked his sinister intentions. Psychologists later emphasized how his mask of sanity allowed him to manipulate social trust and exploit vulnerability without raising immediate alarm. The investigation into Gacy's disappearances was slow to gain traction. Missing persons reports were treated individually, and the broader pattern went unnoticed for years. It wasn't until the disappearance of 15-year-old Robert Piest in December 1978 that authorities began focusing seriously on Gacy. Piest had a scheduled meeting with Gacy about a potential job and never returned home. His disappearance finally prompted police to scrutinize Gacy as a primary suspect. Police initially struggled to connect the cases. Each disappearance seemed isolated, and missing persons reports didn't immediately suggest a serial offender. Small inconsistencies in Gacy's statements, along with reports from employees and neighbors, began to raise suspicion only gradually. When law enforcement obtained a search warrant for Gacy's home, the horrors within were unimaginable. The crawl space contained dozens of bodies, carefully buried. The stench and sight were overwhelming for the officers who discovered them. Personal items and clothing allowed investigators to identify victims, confirming the scale of the crimes. In total, 29 bodies were recovered from beneath Gacy's home, with additional victims later found in nearby rivers. Even after his arrest, Gacy continued to manipulate perceptions. He confessed to 33 murders but claimed a compulsion he could not control, attempting to shift blame to a supposed other personality. Expert analysis later confirmed that his acts were premeditated, calculated, and deliberate. The charm and friendliness that had allowed him to evade detection now only deepened public horror. Psychologists noted the stark duality of Gacy's life: an ordinary, even likable community member by day, a calculated murderer by night. His ability to maintain normalcy while committing horrific crimes demonstrates the terrifying power of manipulation, social trust, and a carefully constructed facade. The public, meanwhile, struggled to reconcile these truths. How could the clown at children's hospitals, the volunteer at political events, the neighbor who smiled and waved, be capable of such atrocities? The answer lay in the mastery of deception and the exploitation of social perception. Gacy's story highlights not only the horror of the murders themselves, but also the difficulty of detecting predators who can hide in plain sight. Communities placed trust in outward appearances, while warning signs were either missed or rationalized away. This tragic combination allowed him to continue for years without suspicion. Even as investigators pieced together the puzzle, the scale and audacity of Gacy's crimes forced law enforcement, psychologists, and the public to confront uncomfortable truths: that appearances can deceive, that social charm can hide extraordinary evil, and that trust, once misplaced, can have deadly consequences. The arrest of John Wayne Gacy sent shockwaves through Chicago and the nation. In December 1978, following the disappearance of 15-year-old Robert Piest, authorities finally had enough evidence to target Gacy. Investigators had noted inconsistencies in his statements and gathered reports from employees and neighbors, revealing a pattern that pointed directly to him. When officers executed the search warrant at Gacy's home, they found what would become one of the most chilling crime scenes in American history. The crawl space beneath the house was filled with bodies, carefully buried to conceal the horrific truth. Personal items and clothing helped identify many of the victims, confirming a scale of brutality previously unimaginable. In total, 29 bodies were recovered from the crawl space, with additional victims later found in nearby rivers. The contrast between Gacy's public persona and the horrors beneath his home stunned the nation. He had been Pogo the Clown, entertaining children at parties and hospitals, volunteering in the community, and hosting neighborhood events. Yet, hidden under his house were the remains of dozens of young men he had lured, restrained, and murdered. The duality of his life became a defining feature of the story, illustrating the terrifying reality of evil masked by normalcy. During interrogation, Gacy confessed to 33 murders. He attempted to shift blame to a supposed other personality and described compulsion as a driving force behind his actions. However, experts concluded that his crimes were highly premeditated, methodical, and deliberate. The confessions offered horrifying insight into his meticulous planning, the manipulation of victims, and the concealment of bodies. The trial began in 1980, attracting national attention. Prosecutors presented overwhelming evidence, including victim identification, physical evidence from Gacy's home, and his own statements. Witnesses detailed the disappearances and the contrast between the outwardly friendly neighbor and the hidden predator. The prosecution emphasized Gacy's premeditation, manipulation, and awareness of wrongdoing, painting a complete picture of his crimes. Gacy's defense attempted to argue diminished responsibility, citing alleged compulsion and mental instability. Psychiatric experts testified, but evidence of careful planning, pattern consistency, and efforts to conceal victims undermined the defense's claims. The jury ultimately found him guilty of 33 murders, and he was sentenced to death. During his time on death row, Gacy filed appeals and petitions for clemency. Despite these efforts, he was executed by lethal injection on May 10, 1994. His execution closed the legal chapter of his life, but did not erase the lasting impact on victims' families, the community, and the nation. The case also had lasting effects on law enforcement practices. Police procedures regarding missing persons and potential serial offenders became more systematic, focusing on pattern recognition and earlier intervention. Investigators learned the importance of following small red flags and recognizing the potential for a single perpetrator to be responsible for multiple disappearances. Gacy's story also left a profound cultural impact. Stephen King's 1986 novel It introduced Pennywise the Clown, a fictional character that bore an eerie resemblance to Gacy. While King never officially confirmed Gacy as inspiration, the parallels are striking. Both present as clowns, prey on young boys, and hide unimaginable evil beneath a seemingly innocuous exterior. This association cemented Gacy's story in popular imagination, creating a lasting cultural archetype of the evil clown. Media coverage amplified the horror. Newspapers, television, and magazines highlighted the shocking contrast between Gacy's public and private life. The image of the smiling clown, juxtaposed with his buried victims, became an enduring symbol of hidden danger, capturing the public's attention and shaping the true crime genre. Psychologists and criminologists continue to study Gacy's behavior. His mask of sanity, the ability to appear friendly, charming, and ordinary while committing horrific crimes, illustrates the terrifying potential of psychopathic traits. He manipulated trust, exploited social networks, and hid in plain sight, demonstrating how outward appearances can be deceiving. Families of the victims were forever changed. Each young man represented a life cut short, dreams unfulfilled, and loved ones left searching for answers. Remembering the victims is central to understanding the human cost of Gacy's actions and the broader societal impact of failing to recognize warning signs. Gacy's story serves as a cautionary tale. It highlights the fragility of trust, the dangers of overlooking small red flags, and the consequences of deception cloaked in normalcy. Communities, law enforcement, and society at large were forced to confront the uncomfortable truth. Evil does not always announce itself, and appearances can be dangerously misleading. Even decades later, the fascination with Gacy's life endures. Documentaries, books, and media coverage continue to explore the chilling duality of the man who smiled for the public while hiding horrific acts beneath his home. His story remains a powerful example of how manipulation, social trust, and human psychology intersect with crime, warning viewers to remain vigilant and aware. Even after Gacy's arrest, the story didn't end. His crimes left an indelible mark on American culture, shaping both fear and fascination with the evil clown archetype. Stephen King's 1986 novel It introduced Pennywise, a sinister clown preying on children. And while King never officially confirmed Gacy as inspiration, the parallels are unmistakable. Both hide unspeakable evil behind playful appearances. Both exploit trust, curiosity, and innocence. Pennywise became a symbol of the hidden threat lurking behind familiar faces, a reflection of the chilling reality Gacy had lived. The cultural impact went further. Movies, documentaries, books, and true crime podcasts referenced Gacy, exploring the terrifying contrast between his public persona and his crimes. The image of Pogo the Clown smiling in photographs alongside the knowledge of the murders beneath his house created a haunting archetype. Evil can hide in plain sight. This fascination is not about glorifying his actions, but understanding how someone so ordinary looking could commit unimaginable acts. Psychologists and criminologists continue to study Gacy's duality. He exhibited what experts call a mask of sanity, a carefully maintained exterior of charm, normalcy, and social friendliness, paired with an internal capacity for manipulation and murder. He leveraged social trust, volunteered in the community, and entertained children, all while secretly preying on young men. This duality forces a reflection on how appearances can deceive, and why vigilance is necessary even in seemingly safe environments. The human cost cannot be overstated. Each victim represented a life interrupted. Teenagers and young men with families, friends, hopes, and dreams. Their stories were cut short, leaving loved ones to grieve while struggling to understand the scale of the horror. Remembering the victims emphasizes the tragedy beyond headlines, statistics, or media coverage. These were real lives stolen by a man who hid evil behind a smile. Gacy's story also prompted changes in law enforcement and community awareness. Police procedures evolved to better handle missing persons reports with an emphasis on connecting patterns across cases. Communities were reminded to take subtle warning signs seriously, and the public became more aware that trust should be measured carefully. The lessons extend beyond one man. Gacy's case illustrates the intersection of social deception, manipulation, and unchecked criminal escalation. Culturally, the evil clown trope endures, from horror films to literature, and even in real-life cautionary stories. The notion that someone friendly, familiar, and seemingly safe can hide monstrous intent resonates universally. This archetype, amplified by media coverage and Gacy's own notoriety, reminds us that appearances are not always reality. Pogo the Clown is no longer just a costume. He's become a symbol of hidden danger, of the fine line between trust and terror. Reflecting on Gacy's psychology also offers insight into human behavior and societal vulnerabilities. His ability to charm, manipulate, and deceive demonstrates the dangers of taking appearances at face value. Communities rely on trust, social norms, and outward behavior to judge safety, but Gacy exploited these assumptions with devastating effect. Understanding these lessons can help prevent future tragedies and encourage more careful attention to warning signs. Even decades later, Gacy's story resonates. True crime enthusiasts, psychologists, and storytellers continue to examine his duality, asking how one man could lead a life of such extremes. The fascination is not with the killer himself, but with the lessons his life offers: the dangers of misplaced trust, the consequences of ignoring warning signs, and the enduring importance of vigilance. The story of John Wayne Gacy is both horrifying and instructive. It reminds viewers that evil can exist in the most ordinary-seeming people. It underscores the human cost of violence and deception, honoring the memories of the victims. And it highlights the societal lessons that remain relevant today. appearances can be deceiving. Trust must be considered carefully, and vigilance is a shared responsibility. In the end, Gacy's life and crimes leave a dual legacy, a chilling record of human depravity and a cautionary tale that warns us to look closer, think critically, and never assume safety based on a smile. The man who entertained as Pogo the Clown is gone, but the lessons of his actions endure, haunting, teaching, and reminding us all that the mask of normalcy can conceal unimaginable darkness. For those who study Gacy, the cultural, psychological, and societal impact remains as significant as the crimes themselves. He became more than a criminal. He became a symbol of hidden evil and a reminder of the dangers lurking behind ordinary faces. Understanding his story, reflecting on the victims, and learning the lessons embedded in his duality allows society to remain alert, cautious, and aware, and perhaps prevents a tragedy like this from repeating.